So almost everywhere I go and give a speech about this, it all works the same. Everybody sits in these little committees and they call them stakeholders and talk about sustainable development, and they have all these key words where they try to trick you into doing their plan. But it's interesting, almost everywhere you go, no matter what the committees say, they all come up with the same thing. And if they come up with something different, then the county commissioners just ignore it and they implement this thing called UN Agenda 21. Almost everywhere you go, it all happens the same. It all comes down from this program right here. What they're trying to do is they're just trying to lead you through the process. You know, they go through this kind of dog and pony show where they have a public process, and like I say, they call you a stakeholder and make you feel all important, and let you go through these meetings, and they try to bring you down the path, so they make you feel like you are part of the process. And if you won't go, then they just go ahead and do it over you. One example of this is in Darby School District. We finally got the county commissioners to allow us to have a straw poll vote. Well, a straw poll vote isn't binding. It just basically tells the county commissioners what the people of that area think. Well, way over 70%, I think it was like 74 or 76% of the voters in the Darby School District decided, well, we don't want any zoning whatsoever. The county commissioners weren't going to listen to that, and so they decided that they were going to go ahead and give us the stream side and the Highway 93 corridor zoning anyways. And so that was one of the things that really stimulated the growth policy repeal, is when we all took a look and decided, wow, there's really nothing we can do here except for take away their authority to zone us. But anyways, here's UN Agenda 21, and one of the first things we need to talk about is who implemented this. Well, it was implemented by George Herbert Walker Bush. And, he's a big New World Order guy. You remember his quote, "It's a grand idea, this New World Order." Well, this is part of his New World Order. And what the UN Agenda 21 does is it's a committee of the United Nations. And what they basically want to do is they want to control all property all the way down to your city or county level. But they want to do it in such a way that the United Nations is really the one controlling it. And you can go on the United Nations website and you can look this up. It has kind of a conspiratorial name. I think they did that on purpose, so anytime you say UN Agenda 21, you sound like you're looking for aliens or something. But if you do go to the UN website and you look up Agenda 21, there's hundreds and hundreds of pages on their own website describing it and telling about it, and it shows all the countries in the world that have signed up for it. But here's the Global Biodiversity Assessment, and they concluded on page 763, "The root cause of the loss of biodiversity are embedded in the way societies use resources. The main culprit, Judeo-Christian values." Chapter 12.2.3 states that this worldview is characterized of large-scale societies heavily dependent on resources brought from considerable distances. It is a worldview that is characterized by the denial of sacred attributes in nature, a characteristic that became firmly established about 2,000 years ago with the Judeo-Christian Islamic religious traditions. And here's the good part. So to sum all this up, this global contract binds governments around the world to the UN plan for changing the ways we live, eat, learn, and communicate, all under the noble banner of saving the earth. You see, this is one of their main premises, that the only way they can get you to give up your property rights is for a greater cause like saving the environment. And that's why you see this huge push, and it's become the main corporate scheme through GE. You see Al Gore doing it, but this is right out of the United Nations. They are convincing everyone in the world to give up all their property rights to the United Nations to save the planet. Its regulations would severely limit water, electricity, and transportation. You remember Obama saying, "Oh, of course your electricity will go up tremendously," and the other gas and things. Even deny human access to our most treasured wilderness areas. And we can see that happening all the time. They're always locking gates up in the national forest. They bar off caves. There was a cave that we used to go spelunking in as Boy Scouts, and they found some bat in there. And it was one of the main Boy Scouting events of the year. Every Boy Scout troop in like the tri-state area would go to this cave and go spelunking in there, and they barred it off now. If implemented, it would manage and monitor all lands and people. No one would be free from the watchful eye of the new global tracking and information system. This map right here is a compilation of these different groups and the land that they'd like to take. And so you have the Biological Diversity, the Wildlands Project, UN and US Man and Biosphere Program, and various UN and US Heritage Programs, and NAFTA. But when you take all of these different organizations, these international organizations and such, and you layer the land that they would like to take, this is color-coded, and everything in red is core reserves and corridors, limit little to no human use. And then buffer zones, which is something everyone will become familiar with as they take a look at their regulations, is usually you have an area that you can't use at all, and then there's a buffer zone on that same area. So buffer zones is highly regulated use. That's all the yellow. And you see this kind of, light green, kind of bluish green area, and that's normal use, zones of cooperation. And so you can see, take a look at Montana, and it's almost the whole state's red. They don't want us living there at all, and most of California is red, and a lot of the area in between is yellow. But where do they want us to live? They want us to live in this Texas area and straight up. And one of the main reasons is because, remember, this is where they wanted to run the NAFTA superhighway, is they wanted to run that straight up the middle of the country, and they really want to take a look at having us utilize the China model. And the China model is basically that everybody lives in these cities, and they want us to build up, not out. They want us to live in high-rises. They want us to walk to work. They want us to walk to the grocery store. And then, of course, all the elitists would get to live out in these red and yellow zones, and they'd pack all of us slaves into their little green zones. Now, it's pretty interesting if you took a look at neighborhood plans, and this is another thing that you'll become familiarized with. In our neighborhood plan in Corvallis, it was really interesting. One of the things they wanted to do is they wanted to block off really a few blocks of this main road. It was probably more like a mile. And they really wanted only to have one of every kind of business in there. And so once again, here's a fascist government picking, what kind of businesses can go in there and what kind can't. Then they wanted them all to look the same. They wanted to have kind of a theme, whether it was going to be log cabin or whatever. And a lot of the businesses, they wanted you to have to park on the outside. They'd have a huge parking lot, and you would walk through this business district. Well, the interesting thing is that they would take basically this area and anoint it as being one of the main business districts. And so, of course, if you were one of the developers who happened to own this property along the Corvallis neighborhood plan, then your values on your property would just skyrocket. And one of the main reasons is because they stole value from all the other properties out in the county. But if you take a look at this map, it's really scary because they really want to control exactly where you live and how you live. And just like that last page said, everything would be controlled by the United Nations.